Howdy, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. In today's episode, we're going to be using this piece of 1918 Montana bridge to make a mezzanine here in the shop, not in this part of the shop, but in the other part, my main workbench, my main workstation. I've been unhappy with it for quite some time now, and I think the key is I need it to be better. The way that I'm going to do that is by building an 8-foot by 10-foot mezzanine in the corner of the shop over there, and that will allow me to not only have a little bit more room for storage up above, but it'll also allow me to hang tools and hang stuff from the ceiling and have a little bit more room for supplies and materials and whatnot down below, as well as being able to film from both sides of my workbench, which is something that I can't do right now. So with that, let's talk about the plan. We're going to pause working on the mezzanine for just a moment to talk about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online tool that helps connect you with a therapist. Now, they have a very cool system to help connect you with someone who kind of understands your worldview a little bit better. For me, I think it's super important that your therapist understands your worldview, and so being able to find a Christian therapist, not necessarily local, is a really cool tool to have. Life tends to smack us around with all sorts of things that we have absolutely no control over, and being able to talk about that with someone is just the normal, healthy thing to do. Humans are designed for communication and for community. Being able to share what's going on in your life with someone who's been trained to have the analytical tools to help you work through that is a really cool thing to be able to do. So BetterHelp takes you through a series of questions to help connect you with someone who's going to be a right fit for you. But if you start talking to that therapist and it ends up not being a good connection, that's no problem at all. It's easy and simple to reconnect with someone else. So if you guys are interested in boosting your mental health, you can go to the link in the description down below and go to betterhelp.com/Will Stelter for 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. Get you connected with a therapist who will be able to understand and help you out. Thank you, BetterHelp, for sponsoring today's episode. With that, let's jump back on in. Basically, for those of you who are blessed with the keen powers of observation, you may notice that this area looks a little bit different. Basically, this stuff is getting moved out. This shelf needs to get moved. Unfortunately, there's like 400 pounds of steel on it. I'm gonna have to have some watermelon while Isaiah moves all that. And basically, I'm going to have a mezzanine that will go, it's going to be about 7 feet up, and I'll anchor in some angle iron into the studs along this wall and along that wall, and then I'm going to have that beam sitting essentially where the corner of this pillar is. It'll be 8 feet out from this wall and 10 feet out from this wall. And that'll give me enough room to have this bench pivoted so that the bench vise that's normally in the corner right there, don't even look at my bench, it's so bad right now, will be basically right here. The edge of the bench will be right there. This edge will be against this wall. This jewelry bench is going to get chopped down shorter, and it'll go against that wall where this junky old air compressor is sitting right now, and that will be out of here. I've got a friend coming to pick that up. Then I'm going to get a drafting table to put in here to have a dedicated place to do drawing, and then I bought another toolbox, actually a couple more toolboxes, in order to be able to have some better organization, because right now I don't have any organization. It's pretty bad right now. We've been moving a lot of stuff around, but it's also normally pretty bad. When I get going on a project, there's no cleaning that happens. Okay, so from this crack, you want to be out 18 inches. And from this wall, we want to be 8 feet minus 2 inches, which is 94 inches, which puts us, we want the corner of our beam to be right there. People wonder why it takes so long to get videos out. So here's my thought, Isaiah. I think that we can lay it down and then throw it through there. Hold on. Shoot. Let's just lift it. Just to make sure. So we have our cut list. I've got 2 different sizes of tubing and 1 size of angle iron. So basically, we're going to have a 2x2 square tubing frame around the outside. So it's about 10 feet by 8 feet roughly, and we're going to have a little frame to go around the beam as well. So basically, our cut list is we need 1 piece for the back wall that is 9 feet 10 inches. We need another chunk that is 88.5 inches. We then need another piece at exactly 9 feet, And then one more piece, which is 92 inches, which is 7 foot 8 inches, something like that. And then the internal frame, because I want to put plywood up above, just that there's a roof so we can actually store stuff up there. And we need 5 pieces of the 1.5-inch square tubing cut to 92 inches. So we've got 2-inch square tubing and 1.5 inches, and we will make them flush on the bottom so that 1/2-inch plywood will be just about level at the top, which I think will be just right. And then we need 6 pieces of 18-inch long chunks of that 1.5-inch square tubing to go in between so that we have a nice firm deck to stand on up there. We also, of the 2x2 square tubing, are going to need 1 5-inch piece to span from here to here, and then 1 1-foot long piece to span along the back there. I dropped my pencil. So the first things first is I'm going to cut up the angle iron that we're going to be anchoring into the studs on the wall here. And that way Isaiah can get going on drilling the holes so that we can send screws into the studs while I do the rest of the cuts. Let's do it. Okay, so we've got all except for one of our frame pieces cut. I also cut off this piece of 3/8-inch plate, and that will be our, well, it's going to do what it was just doing, which is sitting on top of this, except it's going to get welded to it, and then it'll allow me to hang the rest of the structural pieces off of that. And so I'll weld it kind of all the way around, get some good weldage going there. And then at the bottom, this will be anchored in with this piece of angle iron. I'm going to cut 2 pieces off of this. I'm just going to mark it here about where it needs to be. And then I'm going to go in about 1 inch because I don't want really to show. I'll drill it for a couple of 1/2-inch holes so that we can put a couple of these power studs in. Neat name. And that will be a great way that this is not going to want to move at all. It'll be super, super sturdy, but it will be removable in the future. So it's a little bit different than anchoring it down in a different way. It is possible to get those out, which is kind of cool. So we're going to do the last couple cuts on this angle iron. Get it cut, get it welded to the beam, mark out where we need to drill our holes for the beam, move the beam away, drill the holes, bring it back, anchor that feller down, and then we can go along and get the 2 pieces of angle iron that are going to be anchored into the studs, drilled in, and then we can start building and welding our frame together up top, just like real steel fabricators. Actually, I think real fabricators would do most of this beforehand. All right, next up is to weld this plate up top here. I'm going to have a good bit of overhang on this side and a little bit on this side. That's an okay problem to have. All right, so you guys know this beam right here, the one that I'm touching? You guys know it? I know it. And I know that I'm going to cut it down. The reason why I have to cut it down is because I had originally planned to use too much material. I originally was planning on putting 2-inch tubing all the way around the outside, including on the wall. But there's already angle iron there, and it just didn't make any sense. And so instead what I decided to do was to rest the ends of my square 1.5-inch tubing that the OSB is going to lay on top of on the angle iron brackets on the wall, and then butt weld it into 2-inch tubing. And so I pushed the 2-inch tubing 2 inches this way from where it was supposed to be originally, and 2 inches that way towards the wall behind me, because again, there was supposed to be some square tubing over there. And so my reveal right here is not so good. There's a gap, you can see through it, it looks terrible. I could fix it with trim, but rather than fixing it with trim, what I'm going to do is cut it off on both sides, and then I'm going to add some of that lovely 1.5-inch tubing to that side, that wall, and this right here. And that will not only support the OSB better, and it'll be a little bit easier than me having to chop up sections to fill in between my stringers. So I'll fix that reveal, and I'll fix this reveal as well. So it's a win-win. I just have to cut off these thick old welds that I laid on here. Which I'm not looking forward to. But we're going to get that done. And then with my square tubing on both sides, I will be able to start adding in my joist. I'm going to start in the middle, welding in my middle piece, and then working my way outwards. And after I have all of my joists hung, then I will be able to go back in and add the kind of supports in between them that'll help really rigidize the whole system. Now I need to figure out exactly how long my pieces on my ends need to be, and then I think I'm going to recut another section of that 2x2 square tubing, just because I really messed up the ends of it trying to get it off. And so I just want a nice fresh piece on the outside there. Alrighty, we got this piece cut to 110 inches. Oh, look at that. Hides the gap. I need to weld this guy. I need to weld my pieces of square tubing that are along the wall on. I need to weld this fella to that piece of 2-inch tubing there. And then I need to weld 2 different pieces, one that's cut to 8 foot and then one that is cut to, I think it's about 18 inches. So I'll have one section that'll go from here to about right here, and then another piece finish it off. And then after that, I need to cut 1.5 inches off of the rest of my beams that are gonna run along. And that'll be that. Okay, so I had to cut out the corner here because there's a weld in the corner of this piece, but now I'll be able to buzz these fellers together. There's a little bit of a gap up here because I need to have some room for that plywood to be able to slide through. Okay, so I realized that I actually did not have enough material based off of my initial purchase. Fortunately, my friend Taylor, the fella who was hanging on to that bridge steel for me, had a piece of 1.5 inch tubing that he very graciously let me buy because it's a Saturday today, and so the steel yard is not open. But I really want to get this wrapped up. So we can keep on going. I got this piece cut to 108.5 inches, which means that it has a nice recess in here, as well as making it all the way to the end. All right, next step is to gang cut the pieces that are gonna be spacers in between our joists running across. These are getting cut to 17.9 inches. Really, it's like 17 7/8 of an inch, but you understand. Okay. All right, now I'm gonna do the layout for this thing, make sure that all of my cuts were in the right spot and that my math worked out properly. Feller is gonna sit. Yep, that'll work. Well, unfortunately the camera died, but I got all of the joists run across. Next step is to tack in all of my spacers across the middle and then start going around and doing some full welding to get everything super, super secure. Well, got 4 more welds left, and I just ran out of wire. All right, the last step before the actual kind of structure-y part of it is done is to get some OSB cut up to throw up there. Now I've got 3 4x8 sheets. They need 2 inches cut off of the end, and they need 8 inches ripped off of the other side. So it's really 94 by 40 is the desired dimension. And I'm just gonna rip this with a skill saw. Fortunately, you don't have to have any of that in order to be able to operate one. Nice. All right, thank you guys so much for following along. The mezzanine is not done yet. There's still a lot of work that needs to happen. These need to get anchored down. The rest of the painting needs to happen. I need to do the siding on the inside so it looks nice in there and not like a beige cave. The bat cave would be a lot less exciting if it was beige. Instead, we're going to put some cool material up there. We also need to light it, and we need to figure out the whole organizational situation. So stay tuned for all of that. Thanks for following along. Thank you, BetterHelp, for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you, patrons, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.
Pretty cool angle.
Yeah, it is. This is dope.